In this section, we're going to start working on a portal. Currently, the only playable level is the island scene. The player can load this scene by starting the game. However, not all levels can be accessed from the menu. We may want players to reach specific areas in our game to move to a new level. The goal of this section will be to create a portal that can take the player from one scene to another. Before creating the portal, we must create a scene to travel to. In this lecture, let's design a new level. It shouldn't take long. First, we must create a new scene. It's been a while since we worked with scenes. As a reminder, scenes can be thought of as levels for a game. To create a new level, we must create a scene. In the project, navigate to the Scenes directory. This directory contains all our scenes. Within this directory, create a new scene by opening the Create menu. Let's select the Scene option. The name of our scene will be called Dungeon Scene. After creating the scene, enter it. Like the island scene, this scene will be built with a tile map. We're going to create a dungeon. I provided the assets to help us build this scene. First, let's prepare the tile map before drawing the scene's map. In the hierarchy, open the Create menu. Under the 2D submenu, select the Tile Map Rectangular option. A new object is created called Grid. The job of the Grid game object is to act as a container for the tile maps in our game. By default, we're given a single tile map. Let's set the name of this object to Ground Level. If we look at the grid in the scene, the orientation is incorrect. It shouldn't be vertical. The map should lay flat on the ground. In the hierarchy, let's select the Grid game object. Next, in the inspector, we can configure the grid's orientation through the grid component. The cell swizzle setting can change the orientation of our tile maps. Let's update this setting to XZY. After updating this setting, the grid should be lying on the ground. That's perfect. We can start drawing on the tile map. Switch over to the Tile Map palette window. If you remove this window from your game, let me show you where to find it. Under the Window menu item, you can find this window under the 2D menu. After grabbing the Tile Map palette window, let's configure the brush. In the project, navigate to the Game Assets/Terrain directory. In this folder, we have a model called Dungeon Floor Tile. This model will be painted on the tile map. First, let's convert it into a prefab. Drag it into the hierarchy. Next, drag it into the Tiles folder. Lastly, delete the game object from the hierarchy. Next, let's try adding this prefab to the brush. Under the Tile Map window, there's an option for changing the brush. Change the brush type to Game Object. This brush allows us to paint the tile map with a game object. Under the Cells section, we can change the game object. Let's drag and drop the Dungeon Floor Tile object to this field. Be sure to drag the prefab, not the model. Time to start painting. To make it easier, let's view the scene from the top. You can quickly adjust the rotation of the scene's camera by clicking on the Y-axis from the Scene gizmo. Before drawing, your camera should be looking at the center of the world. If you don't know how to find the center, we can use the Ground Level game object. Selecting this game object with the Move tool reveals the gizmo for the Move tool. By default, tile maps are centered in the world space. Gizmos will always be positioned in the center of a game object. Therefore, the center of our world is where the gizmo is. After finding the center, let's head back to the Tile Map window. Set the Active Tile Map option to Ground. Before drawing anything, you should always set the Active Tile Map option. Otherwise, you may draw the game objects in the incorrect tile map. Next, click on the brush icon. Start brushing in the tile map. The tiles should be drawn near the center of the map. You don't have to be exact. As long as you're close to the center, you're good to go. I'm going to draw a 15 by 15 tile map. Next, I'll fill in the tile map. The floor of the dungeon has been drawn. Before finishing this lecture, let's add an entrance. In the project, navigate to the Game Assets/Terrain directory. We have a model called Dungeon Door Wall Tile. This model will draw the door for our dungeon. The player should be able to enter or exit through this door during scene transitions. Let's convert this model into a prefab by dragging it into the hierarchy. Lastly, delete the prefab from the hierarchy. Next, let's create a new tile map. Adding a second tile map will allow us to separate the ground level from the second level. Right-click on the Grid Game object. Select the 2D Object, Tile Map, Rectangular option. Set the name of the object to Walls. Select the Walls Game object. Before drawing tiles on this tile map, the transform settings should be updated. Currently, the Walls tile map is sitting on the same layer as the ground level tile map. Let's update the Y position to 0.5. By updating the position of the tile map, the walls will be elevated above the ground. We can proceed to draw the doors on the Walls tile map. Switch over to the Tile Map palette window. Set the Active Tile Map option to Walls. Next, let's update the brush by setting the game object to the Dungeon Door tile. As a friendly reminder, the object should be the prefab, not the model. Lastly, select the Brush option to start painting this object in the scene. We're going to draw the door at the center of the bottom edge. Before drawing the door, you should confirm that we're looking forward to the world space. When the players enter the scene, they should be looking forward. As a reference, you can use the Scene gizmo to remind yourself of the forward direction of the world. The forward direction of the world is always the direction of the blue arrow. Our door should be facing this direction. Let's draw it on the tile map. To confirm that the door has been drawn correctly, let's move the scene camera around the map. Perfect. It's been drawn correctly. We're starting to run short on time. In the next lecture, let's finish this scene before getting into some programming.